Ladies and gentlemen, when I asked my guest to send me a bio, this is what he sent. And I quote, Angel hails from El Paso, Texas, a college dropout with low class and high aspirations. Might not be the first ape in the aerospace industry, but definitely the coolest. In fact, Angel is one of the most articulate and hardest working people I've ever met. As we talked, I learned that Angel has seen some very hard times, pulled himself out of some very bad situations, and reinvented himself a number of times. This conversation gets really deep, and we talked about some pretty uncomfortable but very important things. I hope you enjoy listening to episode 2 of the Ponderosa Pine podcast. So did you have any issues driving up the road in that little sports car here?
No, man. It's a little Subi that could.
You drifted around the corners a little bit. I joke with Sally because she has a Forester. I'm like, I'll put on like a World Rally video and I'll be like, that's how you need to drive around the corner.
Funny enough, I actually just put new tires in, was it last week? Sometime late last week.
Yeah, they look good.
I don't use that car and I don't check her tires very often. But the wires were kind of peaking, dude.
Oh,
yeah, that could have been bad. And we were planning to go down to El Paso.
Oh,
so it's a good thing that I just decided to go.
That thing probably gets way better mileage than your big.
Oh, dude,
big rig.
That rig was it was a choice. I wouldn't say it was a smart one, but it's great. I mean, it for what we needed for. It's really good.
Well, you got a whole lot of people, right?
Yeah, and Austin has very recently gained interest in motocross.
Oh, okay. Like
we
BMX or
yeah,
okay, cool.
Little two-stroke. So it's something that I decided I was okay with him. I've done quads for most of my young adult life, so.
Oh no, the kids will start doing that stuff young. Like then as adults, they're really competent motorcycle riders,
yes.
and you learn the skills you learn on the dirt, like save your life on the road.
Yeah. So I said, figured I'd get him a little 50cc, get him going, and
Nice.
let him give it a rip, man. So
Yeah.
why not? Why not? Yeah, man. So it's obviously, thank you for having me. It's I think. I had the same thought as you did earlier. The whole therapeutic aspect of this.
Yeah.
Something that can not only help me, but hopefully other people.
Well, that's the whole idea. Is in talking to interesting people, that will bring out things that resonate. And that's what I'm. I hear other people's stories, and sometimes there's certain things that resonate. Like childhood trauma or some job change or something, and I find tremendous value even if it's just hearing someone else that had the same thing happen, even if there's no solution provided, if it's just, hey, I'm not alone being this way,
Yeah, a lot of the times there isn't a solution. It's just
that's okay.
Finding comfort in knowing that there's other people that might be feeling some kind of way, same way you are.
And sometimes just, knowing that there's not a solution, but maybe seeing different coping mechanisms or different ways to, move forward without a solution. Because some of the stuff I don't think there's solutions for, like childhood trauma or, I don't think you're not going to fix that, but you might figure out a way to navigate your world better and, just kind of understand some of the things, some of the feelings, some of the...
Maybe a healthier way to cope with it because, there's just... I'm fortunate. I'm not going to say I had a terrible childhood. I think my parents did best they could.
Yeah.
Within you. Come from, a very, very much Mexican family. Where feelings are gay. You deal with all that pain like a real man would.
Unless they're feelings for your sister, mother, or grandmother, right?
Yeah,
those are okay.
Yeah, then those are okay. No, it's very macho. Very you deal with those emotions like everyone else does. You bury them as deep as you can, so that
which is not a good strategy, but that's what a lot of us did. I mean, even I came Irish Catholic father who was born in the 30s, so like emoting wasn't really a thing.
Yeah. No, my dad is the same way, man. My dad grew up, he had it rough, The
Yeah.
guy grew up with a very abusive father. And
Where'd your dad come from?
He comes from a little town called Camargo, Mexico. It's a tiny, tiny town. It's a lot more developed now.
Yeah.
But back then, I couldn't.
And where's that?
That's I would say I've never been there.
Roughly.
I've only had it described to me, but I think it's about like 3 hours from Juarez.
South.
Into
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's
That's
a
kind of
place
a
that-
remote area, isn't
Very.
it? Yeah.
It's
I've
it's
looked
all
on maps.
it's all
Yeah.
farmland, man.
Yeah.
It's all farmland. His father was a piece of work, from what I understand. He was very abusive, physically, mentally, any way that you could possibly think of. The guy was just he was the guy. He
Just
was that
not
guy.
okay.
Yeah. My dad grew up having to stay home, and especially on paydays, Fridays, to protect my grandmother, because my grandfather was going to come home and he was going to be on one, dude. Yeah, and he was going to wail on her. So because of that, he had no relationship with his father, didn't really know or was taught how to be a man. And surprisingly, he turned out to be a great human being.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I was gonna, because a lot of times
Complete
that stuff carries
opposite.
on from generations.
Yes. Yes,
and so he's the one that broke the cycle. That's so cool.
It's very impressive, because the rest of his siblings, the rest of his brothers, are not anything like he is. He's a very unique individual. I mean, he's still very much a hard ass, but he cares, man. And
Yeah.
He is constantly checking on me, making sure that you're doing well, kid, and always told me I was going to go far. He always wanted to ingrain that whole stay in school and you'll do big things kind of mentality, and to an extent, I think it was there. It was implanted. I just decided to kind of
It stuck for a while.
it stuck, and then it was just kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna do my own thing. But
So when did he come to the U.S.?
he came to the U.S. He was very young then, and I believe he immigrated here in his early 20s. I want to say. He did it, I believe, the legit way. It was my mom who did it the not legit way. She actually ran across the border.
Okay.
And she hid behind a barrier in the freeway.
Wow.
So she ran. She says she hid there until someone picked her up, and then, from then on, she decided to do the whole process to become a citizen or whatever, or a resident. So her story is she's got a very interesting background as well. She grew up in a huge family. They both did, but hers was a lot bigger.
Yeah.
She ingrained a lot of things that to this day I try to apply. I just don't. I don't. I'm not a super touchy-feely person.
It takes work.
It takes a lot of work for me. That's probably why I don't have a huge amount of friends. I have to feel like, or see that there's value in that relationship. For example, yours, I obviously value. You're a very accomplished man, and although you can be a degenerate, you're a really, really inspirational person. And as opposed to other people that I've had in my life that have just been acquaintances, if there's no value that they contribute to what I do or where I'm at that point in life, I kind of just.
I think is how old are you now?
I'm 36.
36. So I'm a bit ahead of you, and almost 20 years, like 18 years ahead of you. But as you get older, I think it becomes much more like, where's the value? Like, what's not just I want to have a lot of friends, I want to be popular. It's how is this person enriching my life and how am I enriching theirs? And if it doesn't make sense, it's as you get older, I think it's easier to just be like, you know what, I'm good. Like, my wife and child, and then beyond that, everything else is just kind of extra.
Agreed. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, growing up, I wasn't a kid that was. The sense of family is it's talked a lot about in Mexican families.
Oh yeah.
But it isn't always practiced. If that
kind of
makes
like
sense.
a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like
In my family, I mean, it was always about family and unity and stuff like that. But I feel like there, in at least in our family, there's confusion between unity and being dependent.
right. Yeah,
There's
I
a
think
fine
that's pretty
line
common.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my family. I mean, I didn't leave my parents' house until I was in my mid-20s.
Okay.
Most people tend to leave the nest
Yeah.
when they're going off to college, you know what I mean, and start gaining experience, making connections.
Yeah, right around 18. I left at 17, but that was because the military will take you back.
I had the desire to do so. I mean, I had my first job at 16 at a Burger King, which,
Nice.
interesting enough, I was fired on my on the day I got paid. Not for anything I did.
Your first paycheck?
Yeah, my first
nice.
paycheck. So I still got paid. I think it was like a whopping $70, but because when I applied, the manager didn't pay attention to my age. And apparently you had to be 17
To work.
Yeah, so I mean, I got pretty cool experience. I gained a lot out of it. I wanted to be independent from a very young age.
So it wasn't performance based.
No, it wasn't performance based. I was the best burger flipper in Anthony, New Mexico at that point, and they know it. I'm sure everyone knows it. I just had that desire. I wanted to go out there and see the world, but.
And so your parents met, and then eventually ended up.
In Anthony, New Mexico.
In Anthony,
so
okay.
yeah, I lived a lot of my life both in Juarez and here. Obviously, a lot of my mom's family is there.
Because I feel like you've been claiming El Paso this whole time.
El Paso is where I was born, and it is one of the greatest cities, a culinary gem. It is. I miss it so much.
You know, and I got to be completely honest. I have always given El Paso kind of a bad rap, and there's no reason for that because the only thing I've ever done is pass through El Paso to go to Juarez when I was younger. I'm not sure I could do that now, but back in the day, I used to go down there, periodically, not super frequently, but I never actually spent any time in El Paso that wasn't just completely passing through.
Okay. Was it because of the base down there?
I think it's El Paso. No, I just because I grew up here in Albuquerque, and so sometimes we'd go down to. I went down to Las Cruces one time for a bicycle race when I was in high school, and I was staying with a college friend of my brother's, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go to Juarez tonight." So we went down to Juarez. Well, I was at a bike race, which. And then foolishly, I'm down there. I'm like, I didn't want to drink alcohol, and so I was like, "Oh, I'll just drink water." And somehow I didn't get sick. So,
well, I mean,
I might have dodged a bullet. I don't know. Juarez, how good the water is. And then later, like we would just I went down there for bike races a couple of times, and then went down there in like my mid-20s to go see the bullfights with some friends. We went down, we walked across the bridge, caught the sketchiest. This is like the sketchiest taxi ride I've ever had, and the second sketchiest was in Manzanillo. So, because you're doing the whole Mexico taxi math, where you don't want to spend $6, you want to spend $3.
Yeah.
Like somehow that $3 becomes super important.
Yeah.
And so we get in the unlicensed cab.
Yeah.
And the dude took us the most convoluted way to get to the bull ring, and maybe because he was avoiding the police, I don't know. And then he almost got in a fight with some other guys that he cut off, and he had a gun.
So he gave you guys the whole experience.
Yeah, and then we got there and watched the bullfights, and then when we left, we could only find a legitimate cab, so we got in one of those, and it was like a straight shot back to the border. Like it was on the same road as the bridge. Like, so it was just...
I don't think he was dodging the police. I think he was dodging possibly people that he needed to pay a quota, a tax.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this was in the 90s.
They have lookouts, and I'm probably kind of keeping track of who's driving and who's not. So yeah, my parents met it when they were very young. They ended up moving to Anthony, New Mexico, another little tiny town. Back then, it was super underdeveloped. There was literally just houses in the middle of nowhere. It was super strange.
How close is that to El Paso?
It's about 15 minutes drive.
Okay, so it's almost like a suburb.
It's right in between Las Cruces and El Paso.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that there is to see there is cows. There's like tons of dairies in between. And other than that, there's not. It's really not a sight to behold.
Yeah.
They moved there when I was 3 years old, and I've lived there ever since. But
nice.
I went to school there in Anthony. Then decided to go to college in UTEP. That didn't work out, and then I moved over to NMSU. That
So what made you leave that?
Drop the whole college thing?
Well, what made you switch schools?
Well, first and foremost, I have the attention span of a goldfish. Well, I had back then. I think I have better control of it now than I did back then. I jumped from major to major, man.
Oh.
I didn't know what I wanted to do. You know,
Why did you go to college in the first place? Because
I was told that was the best thing to do.
Yeah.
To be fair, it wasn't a desire of mine. It wasn't an interest of mine. It wasn't anything I wanted to be involved with. Mm-hmm. But because I wanted to make my parents proud, like, you know, all kids do.
I think that's super common, yeah.
Yeah. I decided to get myself into debt and go to college. Safe to say that although I did graduate, I don't feel like I gained anything of value.
Yeah.
And we can go a little bit more into that. But I don't feel like I gained anything really outside of just debt. Nothing that I learned in school, and I wouldn't say it's by any fault of their own. Maybe I just didn't know how to pick classes. Maybe I just was my ape brain was not.
Well, do you think if you don't have a goal, it's probably hard to focus?
I think that's huge. Yeah, that's huge. If you don't know where you're going into college and you're just kind of like drifting, it's hard to really absorb anything.
It's not like it's going to magically come down and tell you.
Yeah, I was more into just the parties. It was just the parties. It was the intramurals. It was the fun. I mean, because college it was great, man. It was fun. I made a lot of friends there. A lot of acquaintances, a few friends, some of which I'm still friends with.
Nice.
Izzy, that's her nickname, not a real name, but she's someone that I'm still friends with today, and she has a heavy impact on my life.
Nice.
Someone that helped me out a ton when I was going through some issues there in my early adulthood. Yeah, man, I don't regret going to college. I regret not having a good head on my shoulders at that point in my life. I was really focused on the dumb stuff,
That's a tough age. Like, it really, at that age, unless you're just like totally goal focused, which it seems like with a lot of kids is 90% their parents. Mm-hmm. But unless you have a specific finish line in mind, like, that's not really the right age for our brain development to be trying to figure out life.
That's fair.
I don't feel like I really got very like career oriented until I was like 30. So.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I got career oriented at 30. But I still didn't know what I wanted to do until I was about 30.
Oh, no, I just realized at 30 that I should have had a career.
Yeah?
Because I had already been in the military, back out of the military. I'd done a ton of different little, entry-level jobs, similar to the one where I met you.
Yeah.
And just, worked in all these different industries and businesses, but not with any upward mobility and just kind of job to job.
And real kind of purpose,
for a long time, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it was it was around 30, I was like, I better pick a direction, and I kind of fell back into the military. But
I did the same. I did the same thing, man. I just chased salary figures that I Googled.
So what'd you major in?
I majored in criminal justice.
Okay.
But I studied. You might want to write these down. Dental hygiene.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I did civil engineering. I did architecture. That's
where your GIS stuff comes.
Yeah, that's where my GIS stuff comes into. I did, obviously, criminal justice. I tried to go into biology. I wanted to get a degree to kind of see if I can go into marine biology, which, funnily enough, I'm terrified of the ocean, so I don't know what I was intending to do.
We live in a landlocked desert state.
And I can get close to the ocean and kind of take pictures of the ocean, but I have no interest in going in there I just don't want to.
I'm good with the ocean till it's more than 30 feet deep, and then I don't know what's down there. It's just not. There's sea monsters and stuff. I don't know.
Cthulhu. I know it's an irrational fear, but my brain swears there's a megalodon down there somewhere. I mean, just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean
To
it's
be
not
honest,
there.
we don't know.
I mean, that's true. Yeah, that's
we
true.
don't know what's down there.
And no matter how they try to paint that, I know they've told me, a shark that big, we don't have the kind of ecosystem to sustain that.
But even the stuff we
dietary
do
needs.
know about, and great whites, jellyfish, like there's all kinds of scary stuff that we're well aware of, and is well documented. And on top of that, the weather. Like I saw a perfect storm. It's a documentary about fishing. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I admire what those guys do, though, man. I've seen videos of the guys trying to.
It's Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I've just seen kind of videos on social media of guys that are caught up in these crazy storms, and they were trying to stay erect.
Yeah.
As the ship kind of moves, it's insane, man. I don't know how to. Everything's flying in the background, and
I've seen those. Yeah, the guy like sliding across the floor.
That's
just
terrifying.
I don't
man.
know. Yeah, no, it's not for me. But
Yeah, my respect goes out to these folks because they can definitely do things that I would never in a million years. No matter how much you try to pay me, I'm not going
I'll
out
pass.
to the middle of the ocean with crazy waves at night. I just can't. I literally cannot.
yeah, that's a big note for me.
Yeah, it's a big no for me. So growing up, it was. I just didn't have a lot of guidance. My dad was and still works almost 7 days a week. Still.
What does your dad do?
He's a roofer.
He's a roofer. Wow, I've done a bit of that. That's hard work.
I did a tiny bit of that. Yeah, I did a tiny bit of that, man. I lasted probably a whole week, and then I decided this is definitely not my jam, man.
Yeah.
Carrying 50, 60 pounds bundles up a
3-tab,
ladder.
yeah, like up the ladder.
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Roll roofing, I've done that.
So yeah, he did what he the best he could, with what he knew. So I don't fault either of my parents for how they raised me. I can acknowledge that I didn't have a lot of direction. I had no idea where I was going, where I needed to go. I just had the very general, you have to be a good person, don't kill, don't cheat, don't lie. Those the very basic. I guess the commandments.
Those are kind of the important ones.
Yeah, the important ones.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, where I wanted to go. So,
do you think that's the parent's job to make sure the kid knows where they want to go, or just to give them the basic framework and let them figure it out? Like,
I think it's a mixture of framework, but also you have to nudge. I mean, because even as an adult, man, you got to nudge me sometimes to do things.
yeah.
There's got to be that nudge. You got to check in from time to time, see how they're doing. Not just how did your day go, but there's a lot of things that kids can go through in just a single day that you need to really. I don't want to say probe, but you just want to make sure that mentally they are at a place where they can handle whatever it is they're going to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter's 13, and so we're kind of getting into the territory where she's not sharing as much with us, and so definitely, I don't ever want her to feel unsupported.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't really want to spy on my own child, So it's a tough balance. And then talking about your parents and definitely my parents, I feel like generationally, it's really hard for the previous generation to tell the next generation what the direction should be because, they live in a different world than we do, And I lived in a different world than my parents, My dad grew up post-Depression, and, his world is very different than, me growing up in the 70s and 80s, and,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, especially I think between, the 90s and the 20s, well, even like the 2020s. How we've advanced and developed.
I feel like we're at a time of change on par with the Industrial Revolution, and that's just an opinion I've formed recently. I feel like this is going to be as much of an upheaval as that was, and that was pretty traumatic. With any luck, we won't follow that directly with a world war and a depression. But I feel like that's the only, in history, that's the biggest parallel was the Industrial Revolution, because that's something that kind of affected the entire world, totally changed everybody's lives, everybody, and not always in a good way.
No, agreed. And so you do what you can with what you know, and I will say I didn't know very much back then, man.
So what happened? College, you did finish and got a degree?
I did.
Okay,
I did get a degree.
You told me you were a dropout, so that's some false advertising.
Well, I got my associate's degree, which I don't consider. I will be honest with you. I don't consider that to be any kind of
I
accomplishment.
also have an associate's degree in criminal justice. Because,
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
the Air Force
Cool.
made me get it.
Cool.
like in order to continue getting promotions,
Sam made me do it?
You have to do what's called the Community College of the Air Force and get a degree.
Okay.
And so it's just like it's an accredited school kind of. But the funny thing is, it doesn't matter. One of the guys that worked for me right before I retired had a bachelor's degree in like psychology, and they're like, no, you still have to get your CCA. And it's just an associate's in your field where you're, so for me, it was criminal justice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't applied my degree to any extent. I had aspirations of, being the cop, the SWAT team, and all that gung ho,
Like the best, most Hollywood version of a cop.
Yes, absolutely, man.
Yeah. You don't actually do paperwork or even really carry handcuffs because you just shoot everybody you meet.
Yeah, you do it akimbo. You just dual carry everything. You take out all the bad guys, and then you go home. No, I didn't apply any of my degree to any extent. I kind of resented. I did try going for my bachelor's, but I resented the lineup of professors that I got the first semester.
And that was at Utah?
NMSU.
Oh, NMSU.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was at NMSU.
Okay. Go ahead.
I don't want to talk negatively about these people, but one of them just directly admitted that they had never ever set foot in any kind of occupational environment where they actually did any policing, any kind of work in the criminal justice field. They had strictly gotten their degree through going to class. And then
immediately gone into academia.
Immediately went into teaching.
Yeah.
And to me, that was it was a letdown. It was a letdown, man. You're being taught all these things that you don't even know if applied at that point. When in community college, I was being taught by, some of the greatest, coolest professors ever. That I had a NYPD detective. I had another guy that was a clinical psychologist at one point. I had another one that worked for the FBI. These folks had, incredible. You could just literally sit there and listen to them talk because they had such great stories, and they were able to tie in whatever the lesson was for the day by some anecdotal way. And then you go into college and into the actual university, and it's just reading a book. And although a lot of these, theories and ideas made sense, I just saw no real application into what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and they just don't have as much credibility in a way.
Yeah, and that, I think, to me, that was a huge factor.
Yeah.
The credibility, the ability to back up your shit. Like you can tell me all you want, but if you have no real life experience, my brain kind of decides to not give it as much credit as I should. And so that kind of drove me to just roam around and bounce from subject to subject, man. I also did firefighting. I took a fire science course.
You just did it all.
Man, I did everything. And it was because, again, I had no direction. I just knew I wanted to do something.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something. I wanted to contribute. I know in my end goal was to contribute something to humanity, whether it was, as small as, policing and helping reduce crime. With firefighting, it was obviously saving lives. I just wanted to help.
Yeah.
That was my whole thing. I wanted to be able to contribute in that way. And I think I did great. I mean, I'm IFSEC certified. I have my Fire 1 seal. I have, biohazard stuff. It's funny, man, because I have all these things, all these certificates. I have field investigations certificates, and and I never applied any of this.
Yeah, but there's a lot to be said for having a really broad kind of base of knowledge, because then you can kind of look at, even just talking to other people, you kind of understand a little bit of their world maybe, or their, when you're interfacing with people who do those jobs, or you can kind of, feel like, okay, I'm not talking to an alien here, like.
Yeah, I think there's there's a very eloquent way of putting that. It's called Jack of all trades, master of none.
Right.
So, I know a little bit about a lot, and I think it's helped me get to where I'm at now. I don't pretend to know, a lot, but what I do know is I know it very well, and I pride myself in being able to do that. I had to go through a lot to get to where I'm at, both mentally, physically. It's been a rough road, man. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna say I've had the worst. I know people out there that really, really had it rough, but I think a lot of my experiences, ranging from childhood trauma to mistakes I made as a young adult, they all kind of pushed me to be who I am today, and I don't stop, man. Even nowadays, I try to change, whether it's a behavior or a habit, or I actively try to change that, because for a long time I was very complacent. For a long time I was just doing as little as I could just to get by, as long as I was able to get by, and so that ends up developing pretty bad habits and pretty bad behaviors.
Well, I've definitely spent big chunks of my life doing things kind of just by default. Like, I keep getting jobs just to pay the rent. I keep, and I did that all through my 20s. Like once I left the military the first time, I just, worked all kinds, whatever it took to make sure I was financially responsible, but not much above and beyond that, and just kind of like, and once again, like I said, jobs with absolutely no upward mobility. So I wasn't planning for the future at all.
Yeah,
I was just planning for paychecks.
Yeah,
and so I know what
planning
that's
for
like.
Friday night. Yeah, man. And so all this culminated into me wanting to mold my kids into what I hoped I could become one day. Mm-hmm. I think all of us as parents have that desire to get the best for our kids, mm-hmm. to kind of guide them into the correct. But I want to do it in a way where it's not invasive, and I can actually have them make some of the mistakes. Not all of them, because there's definitely some mistakes that I've made that I definitely didn't have any need of committing. But to kind of just push them to develop themselves and find their own identity, man. Yeah.
It's hard. Parenting isn't easy.
Parenting is so hard.
But I think if it's hard, then that probably means you're trying. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there that don't really try very hard, and the result is as expected. So I think if you're trying and being thoughtful and intentional, I feel like that's.
I think that's important. Yeah, the whole intentional portion.
Granted, I've got a sample size of one child.
I have half a football team, I have all sorts of.
So you're in college, drifting around. Was there a specific thing or moment where you decided, all right, I'm just going to go out in the world?
Yes. So when you're in college, you obviously tend to delve into what the kids nowadays call hood rat activity. I was doing drugs, man. I was drinking. Okay. I was drinking at an incredibly fast pace. I was slamming beers like a typical college
18-year-old college kid or 20-year-old.
The only difference is I ended up doing hard drugs. And it was cocaine.
Wow.
Yeah, I jumped into what I thought was the in thing to do, the cool thing to do. Not necessarily because I wanted to do it. I wanted to impress someone. I wanted to impress a girl at that point.
As men, that's at that age, we do a lot of dumb stuff for that exact reason.
Yeah, women are our weakness. They're our kryptonite. They'll make us do crazy stuff. Yeah. So I ended up doing cocaine. Thankfully, that's the only drug I've ever delved into, and it wasn't a very long phase of my life, but during that time, it was very heavy. Yeah. It was to the point where I ended up digging myself into a hole that I can no longer get myself out, and it was all mentally.
Like financial, emotional?
No, it was all emotional. Yeah. It was there's this terrible hangover that you get when you do drugs like that. And for me, I felt all kinds of remorse. I felt disgusted. I felt like I was just nothing.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't contributing anything of value to society, and I figured.
So then, did you
here?
flee back into the drugs because of those thoughts?
No, because of those thoughts, I actually looked for help.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
It
was very
best
different for
outcome.
me. I've had friends who end up just in this kind of like perpetual cycle.
That's
of
sort of
just-
the norm.
That's the norm. Yeah, I don't know what it was, man. I can't describe why. But this girl was a good friend of mine. I met her at during my soccer class, actually in college. Super cool girl. She had this very positive aura about her, and she constantly pushed me to be better, to do better, to. It was this positivity that it just kind of oozed out of her pores, man. It was so strange. That one night, I was ready to just go.
Yeah.
I was ready to go, man. I was gonna hop in my car, go as fast as I could, and hit the first thing that I saw on the road. Obviously, not someone else. I was thinking of just probably going into like a barricade or something.
Yeah.
I hopped over to her apartment, and I knocked on the door, and I just said, "Hey, Izzy, I need to talk." For whatever reason, she immediately told me to come in, have a seat, and I poured my heart out, man. And I told her what I felt, what I did, and she let me know, that these things don't define you, Angel. These things are just, it's the human experience. Mm-hmm. It's and obviously not everyone goes down this route, but it's all part of the human experience, man. And you unfortunately are here now feeling this way, but that doesn't mean that's how you have to feel the rest of your life.
That's awesome.
Safe to say we're still friends to this day. She checks in with me all the time. I go visit her in San Francisco, and I think that if it weren't for her, I really wouldn't be here, man.
Well, that's great. Yeah.
She talked me off the ledge. I was in a bad way. And I can't say that I did these things for any kind of crazy trauma that I had. I did have traumas. I still do. Childhood trauma that is one tough fucking thing to deal with. And I've tried in many ways to get rid of that, but that didn't contribute to me doing any of these things. I don't have a good reason for it. It was just me trying to impress someone that snowballed into what that ended up being. It was just, I put myself in a bad position for no good reason. Fortunately, that was able to change my perspective in multiple ways. I think I valued myself more, didn't do as much self-loathing or anything of that sort. I did jump back into drugs after that, but it was a very short relapse period. Yeah. And then when my firstborn, Austin, was born, it was as if, some kind of weird, I don't know, man, something washed over me, and I just decided that was enough. I didn't have any interest in doing any of that stuff at this point. I was responsible for molding a little human, and I wanted him to be a good kid, someone who contributed, someone who cared. Yeah. Because although I did have family, I didn't really have anyone in my life to show me that they cared. At least not in my way, because you can care and you can tell someone you love them, but not everyone speaks the same love language. Mm-hmm. I had a very different one, and that's essentially what kind of flipped that switch. Yeah. Austin was the one that helped me switch that around.
And so were you married or?
No. I actually was not married to his mom until I believe it was first year, if I recall correctly. We weren't married. We were married for 7 years, but It was, I'm not going to say it was a mistake. It wasn't something I wanted to do. I did not want to be married, man. I knew for a fact back then that, one, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was headed. And I knew I couldn't be the man that I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I wasn't there yet. But, you know, she really wanted me to marry her. She, you know, she wanted to help. I saw, you know, all the good in her. And I decided to just go for it, which was... It's like we're talking about, you know, just some trivial decisions you make in life. No, getting married is huge, man. It's absolutely insane, and it's a huge step to take. And I took it at the wrong time of my life, and knowing full and well that I wasn't husband material at that point. There was I had no business jumping into that. We ended up divorcing 7 years later. That part of my life is, how can I describe it? It's counting. It's I can count the hours I was happy versus the days that I was not. And it wasn't just her fault or my fault. It was just I was not happy or comfortable in that situation. I knew every single day that I woke up that I wasn't worth it. I was not a worthy husband. I was not a worthy father. I didn't consider myself to be a good son, a good friend, a good anything really. I was in this kind of limbo space where I had a lot of figuring out to do.
Yeah.
For a long time, actually. I think it was for most of my 20s up until, you know, my early 30s. I had no idea, man. I had no idea where I needed to go, where to seek, you know, any kind of advice. All the friends that I had were, you know, crazy dudes that were out there just partying, doing all the you know, all that small town stuff.
And so by this time you were back in Anthony, or
Yeah. This time I was back in Anthony. We did live together for a long time in Las Cruces. Everything fell apart. I moved back into my parents in Anthony at the age of 27, 28. I just felt like a bum, man. I felt like I wasn't worthy of anything.
Yeah.
I couldn't find my place in society. Couldn't find direction. You know, what I wanted to do with my life. I was just kind of, like you said, I had no sense of upward direction. I just doing the bare minimum to get by, get a paycheck, and see if by some miracle I figure things out.
Right. It's kind of easy to just sort of drift along with the current and you know, wait for something to happen.
Yeah. It's very, very easy.
It's probably not the wisest strategy.
It's absolutely not the wisest.
But you know, that's what I did for a while, and
it's not the wisest strategy. And again, I don't know if there's anything anybody could have done to change the course of my life.
yeah.
I know I wish there was a lot of things my dad did, but I don't think that if he would have done those things, my life would have changed drastically. I think I was just really meant to go through all that for a reason. Mm-hmm. I think I'm better for it now. And I can actually explain to my kid why some of these decisions, you know, are some that you just don't want to have to come across. You can completely avoid that situation, man.
Yeah.
I am alive at this point by some miracle, man. I put myself into so many situations where people got hurt, people died. There was just, and to be fair, I grew up in a family where, you know, although my dad was a loving man, he was not very affectionate. Neither was my mom. So I ended up trying to complement or trying to fill that void with friends, people, you know. And unfortunately, these friends were
didn't always choose wisely.
Good. Yeah, you chose poorly. I chose poorly very often. And in a town like that, man, it's crime was really high where I lived. You had drive-bys all the time. And to top it all off, my dad's side of the family, his nephews, which were my cousins, some were close to my age, about maybe 3 years and up. The other ones are much older. They were all into gangs.
Oh, man.
They were all into gangs. And for reference, they have all been to prison at this point, and one of them is currently still in prison. Oh, two of them are currently still in prison. Mm-hmm. Only one managed to escape that lifestyle. It was rough, and that's who because you're raised to believe that because they're called your cousin, they're family.
Family, yeah.
Well, that family didn't really care, but that's all I knew. They lived 4 or 5 houses down where we live. Yeah. So it was easy to just walk out front door and just go kind of see what they were doing. And what made it even worse was the people that lived across them were just as bad, if not even worse influence. I mean, these guys were lunatics. When I say lunatic, I mean it. These guys had all kinds of weapons in their house. They were all about, trying to incite violence, trying to get, a rise out of other, rival gangs, stuff like that. So there were a couple times where they came by and, I got to witness the violence up close.
Wow.
So I won't say that fucked me up entirely, but it definitely affected me. It did, to an extent, desensitize my poor little heart at that time. Yeah. There's a lot of things that I wish I didn't see. There's a lot of things that I wish I didn't witness, but
you can't not be affected by stuff like that.
Yeah, it's rough. But again, I think because of all these experiences that I have, I'm better able to guide my kid, and that's my ultimate goal in life, man. To be a good dad. I don't care about where I end up, professionally, as long as my kids can look back and say, hey, he was a great dad. That's really all I care about, dude. That's
right.
Really all I care
Better than them looking back and saying he had a good job and he didn't care about us.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's one of the balances, one of the things that I still struggle with this day, because my job does entail traveling quite a bit. Yeah. But I will say that my boss and how much he pushes work-life balance helps a ton.
Okay, we're going to get into that, but we're still in
Anthony. Oh, you want to go back to Anthony?
Yeah, I just want to get you from there to here, so I want to,
Anthony is
this is all stuff I don't know about you.
Anthony is intense, man. Anthony is it's a very small town. There's really not much to do there. It was gang-ridden back then.
So how did you get out?
By some miracle, dude. I got out because, and I think you just made me realize something, because I decided to go to college.
Okay.
And I made more meaningful friendships with positive people that had good intent. They wanted to be better, and that motivated me to be better. Even though I didn't know what I wanted to be better at, I just knew I wanted to be better.
Well, it's a different quality of folks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You don't see your local, cocaine dealer going to, college for any good reason at least. But yeah, that's what motivated me to leave all of that behind. I think another thing was I was over it, man. Seeing your friends drop one after the other, not only directly because of violence, but I had a lot of friends that were involved in altercations at parties that ended up passing because...
So did you kind of see your own future in that?
Yes. A lot of the times, and this is one of the more kind of eye-opening ones, I used to hang out with guys that were not directly affiliated with the gang, but this guy's brothers were. They were really well known. Very violent folk. And where we decided to go drinking and hang out was actually their house, which, fucking room temp IQ. That was my mindset was, hey, we're protected because they're here. Instead of, dude, they're here.
They're gonna draw violence.
Dude. My train, it's kind of crazy how you can rationalize, stupidity, right? So One of the times that they called me over to go hang out, we called it partying. I think that's a stupid ass term now. I hate it. And people say, "Oh, let's go party." I hate it. But yeah, let's go party. So our idea of partying was going outside their literally front sidewalk. So you're exposed to violence if if somebody decides to drive by. Drink out there and do drugs, cocaine. Back then, that's all people did. So one of the times I actually decided not to go over and hang out with them. I can't remember why. I believe it was because we were actually going off-roading with a separate group of friends of mine. Well, that day, there actually ended up being a rival gang that drove by.
Oh, man.
They fired indiscriminately with a shotgun. Nobody passed, but there was people seriously hurt.
Wow.
I have, one of the guys that I used to hang out with there lost his eye completely. There was others that were, riddled and pepper sprayed or peppered with, buckshot, pellets and whatnot. And it just kind of, to this day, I talk about it and I'm like, dude, you just were not meant to be there. Yeah. There's something that kept you, because that was my norm. That was the place that I hung out. Yeah. I didn't have any other, I did have other groups of friends, but they were doing things that, and this is very, I don't know if it's kind of, your experience, but Mexicans don't encourage each other to succeed. Instead, we put each other down. Oh, you think you're all that now?
I mean, I'm not sure that's exclusive to Mexicans.
I
feel like honest, a lot of people do that.
I've never experienced it with any other race.
No.
And I mean, I've had friends of all, colors, backgrounds.
Yeah.
I've never experienced it the way I experienced it with Hispanic and Mexican culture.
Yeah.
You try to be better and they're like, oh, you think you're all cool now? I think you're all that.
Yeah. I can see
and
that.
It's not, dude, I'm happy you're doing great. It's more like, well, you're too cool to hang out with us now.
Yeah.
And, so back then I had that mindset. I wasn't hanging out with these folks because they were going to college. They were moving on with their lives. They were getting out of that town that I refused to let go of. I had a death grip in on that town for whatever reason. For whatever reason, I decided to hang out with them that one time. And it saved my ass, dude.
Wow.
I don't know where I would be. I don't know if I could have, maybe nothing would have ever happened. I mean, I would have been present when it happened, but I could have also been.
You never know, yeah.
Yeah, so.
But did that kind of show you a different path?
Yes. Yeah. I think that was one of the points where I said, dude, what you're doing isn't working.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for how long now? I think it's time to, promptly remove your head out of your ass and do something different. Wow. Or you're going to end up like these guys. And so I pushed for, doing what they were doing. I try to emulate what they were doing, go to college. Again, I didn't really have a purpose. I just knew I wanted to be better.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't know if I was going to be better. I was just kind of hoping. Like I wanted to. I had that desire to contribute, to help, because what I'd gone through, I wouldn't want anyone else to go through. It's like I said, I'm not. I didn't have the worst upbringing. But I did go through some experiences that I really don't think people should have to go through. It's not something that really should happen to anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then what'd you do after college?
After college, I applied none of the skills I learned, and I went into the insurance industry.
Okay.
I started working for State Farm, great insurance company.
Did you have khakis?
No, the khaki thing wasn't there yet.
No, I'm joking.
That would have been cool, though. No, the khaki thing wasn't there yet. I did that for a while, and then I moved over to a different insurance company, Allstate. I was really good at doing all that stuff, all that computer stuff, all that, it was a lot of talking to people, comforting them, helping them out. Because, when you work for an insurance company, especially a claims department, people aren't calling you to chit chat and to see how you're doing.
Yeah. They're having a bad day.
It's because something
Yeah.
went sideways. So
Yeah.
I learned a lot of conflict management. I learned a lot of empathy because I didn't have it back then. Man, I was pretty much like, and when I started, I'll be honest, people would say, I got in an accident, I hit someone from behind. I would say, well, pay fucking attention,
Walk it off, yeah.
Yeah, shake it off,
Well, the environment you came from didn't foster that.
No.
Didn't foster empathy, did it?
No, so I was very apathetic. I was, very cynical. I still am cynical, I will say, but in a very different way. I'm more of a comedic way.
Yeah.
I'm not, negative as I used to be. So it taught me great, skills in that sense. I was able to learn how to talk to people then. Prior to that, I was, I'm not going to say a recluse, but I just avoided human interaction.
Yeah.
Outside of the morons and the goons, the Goombas that I was hanging out with,
Yeah.
I didn't really care to interact with anyone.
Yeah.
I didn't find any value in it. I still think, even to this day, I don't like to carry on conversations. I don't like small talk. I really don't. I don't carry on conversations with folks that I don't feel are going to have value.
Yeah.
I think that's very fake. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of bullshit. I just don't like it. But it's not like it used to be back then. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't care. And, oh, you're having a bad day? Tough shit. I've had some of those. Yeah. Carry on, dude. Carry on. Life goes on. So I learned a lot of kind of people skills. I learned how to actually listen, not just hear. I have a couple of experiences that I had. I can't really go into them because it's probably, assuming that there's got to be some kind of privacy issue with
It could be,
with
sure.
the things that happen in these people's lives. But
Yeah.
there was a lot of situations where I learned that caring doesn't make you weak, dude. Caring, showing your emotions, crying, does not make you weak. It does not make you weak. And if anything, it helped me expel a lot of that negative emotions that I was bottling up for so long, so long. When it comes to my childhood, I had very deep-seated hatred for the word family.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like I grew up in one.
Yeah.
Growing up, I didn't feel like I was part of my family. I did not feel like I belonged there.
Right.
I felt like an implant. I was.
So now that you're defining what family is to you through your family now,
through my own actions and experiences.
how's your relationship with your parents and your siblings?
So this is how crazy things were. I hadn't hugged my father or told him that I loved him or him the same until maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
My father, and I'm not going to say it's not because he didn't want to say it. I just don't think that he felt comfortable enough or didn't know how to.
I think it's a generational, people talk about toxic masculinity.
Yes.
And that's truly what toxic masculinity is. Like it's the idea that you have to be stoic, you have to be strong, you can't show any emotion, and my father definitely embodied that. I mean, he had that stuff down. I felt loved in other ways through his actions, but not because of the hugs and the I love yous.
Yeah. Yeah. I can completely relate to that, man.
Yeah. So I think that's just a thing. That's how men, in various cultures and previous generations, just thought it was supposed to be. And I think we can change that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I have no issues, man. I can run and hug and kiss and embarrass my kids with being a total child. I am both thankful and kind of resentful of that. Resentful because I feel like a hug or a kiss could have changed a lot of things back then, but I also can appreciate in a very strange way, I can appreciate the fact that my dad was able to hold so much pain and suffering down without it affecting.
No, there's
us
definitely a
directly.
strength there. It's just it's inwardly toxic, and that's what I think.
yeah.
That's where I think people are missing the boat on using that term. Is like it's toxic to the man.
Yeah.
You know, it's toxic or to anybody that does that. Anybody that holds their emotions in and doesn't express them, you're going to poison yourself on the inside.
Yeah. I think that's what he did for the longest time, and to this day he still does it, man.
Yeah.
He's still my dad is gonna go to the grave with certain emotions that he's never going to let out, but he also didn't let that negativity and all that hatred seep into the rest of our family. Like, he held that in too.
Yeah.
So he didn't just hold, positive stuff that I wish he showed, but he also held into negative stuff. And I've tried to talk to him about possibly talking to someone, but that'd
be such a sign of weakness.
That to him, and it would be a monumental thing for him.
That's too
need to
bad.
happen.
Yeah.
And man, I feel like it's affected his health, his mental health, his physical health, his emotional, in so many ways.
I know, it's like, with my dad, just how good I feel hugging my daughter, telling her I love her, and it's like, man, I feel he could have enriched his life, but he didn't. So
and these old grumpy men are gonna go to the grave that way, man.
Yeah.
It's just the way they were raised, I think.
No, it absolutely is.
Yeah, it's he had to harden himself in so many ways because, well, he had to learn how to be a man at 10, 11, 12 years old. Yeah. He was forced to be a man. He was forced to work. He was forced to protect. He was forced to do a lot of things that I didn't have to do until I was in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
So I had it easy compared to the way he had it. It's looking back at it, I wouldn't change any of the things that I've been through. Maybe a couple, but.
So I've done a lot of thinking about that lately, because I hear people say like, "Oh, what would you tell your younger self?" And like in these Facebook groups and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm in a Gen X Facebook group, and so these people are like, "What would you tell your teenage self?" And all these people are spouting all this different stuff they'd say, and my answer is absolutely nothing, because I love where I am. I love my house, my family, my life. I'm even appreciative of the bad experiences as well as the goods, because so I it's like the butterfly effect thing, like where you change one thing and the result's going to be totally different. And so I wouldn't go back and give myself any advice, because I don't want to change anything now. I wouldn't want to upset the balance if you could, but you can't.
Yeah, I think I would. I think there's one thing that
It's one.
and it would probably be to hug them tighter.
Yeah.
The folks that I hugged, made sure I hugged them tighter, because a lot of them I don't have the luxury of doing so today.
Yeah. Well, that's not to say that I didn't make any mistakes or anything. I'm just saying, like, in terms of that sort of mental exercise, I'm not changing anything. I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, no, I really do appreciate where I'm at now. I know that I have the drive and the intensity to do better every day. Something that I don't recall having probably ever.
So how did you get to this end of the state?
This end of the state?
Yeah, how'd you end up in Albuquerque?
Because of Nicole.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys met?
Yeah. So after I worked at Allstate and decided that I hated working a desk job, and I did that for a couple of years, for 4 years actually. I didn't see myself working behind a desk, man. I mean, every single job that I did, every single job that I did was the opposite of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be out there helping, actively doing things, as opposed to what I was doing, which was not being active and sitting behind a computer and clicking a couple of keys here and there. So there was a position that came up, and it was based out of Las Cruces, working for a certain company that did aviation stuff.
Okay.
So I ended up flying in Bell 206s. Funnily enough, it was, I think, one of the few times where I faced my fear just head on. Prior to that, I had never jumped on a plane. I hated heights. And
So a helicopter is the perfect balance of those two.
Man, I'm telling you, I ended up, I was terrified while I was on the plane. When I landed, I nearly kissed the ground. But when I went to the airfield to get in the helicopter and take off, there was some strange that I did not feel any kind of fear. And I think a huge part of it was the pilot that I was with. The gentleman back then, he's had a military background. He had a very interesting way of motivating you. Very comedic, but also it had like a huge military connotation to everything that he said. And so it made things funny to me.
Right.
And because I have so many friends that were in the military, I was able to catch on to a lot of things that he said. So he made it sure that we had common ground, going into that.
So what did you do on the helicopter?
I essentially monitored. We had a huge device at the bottom, attached to the bottom of the helicopter, that essentially detected leaks for methane gas. Okay. So I helped him co-pilot. I did, hazard scanning, make sure we didn't run into power lines, but at the same time I was monitoring. Yeah. Made sure that, if we found any leaks, we were able to tell the clients. And because we worked for a big energy, all these contracts were with the big, big guys for energy and gas. We did this whole operation nonstop most of the time. It was from the moment you woke up to the time the sun was setting, and then you rinse and repeat. So I did it quite a bit, but I ended up falling in love with flying in helicopters, man. It was so cool. I still think it's probably one of the coolest jobs I've ever held. It's so cool. You get to see the world like nobody sees it. Yeah. Nobody gets to see it. Yeah. My office was wherever it is that we were flying, man. I flew through the Rockies. We ended up carving, the sides of mountains in the Rockies. It was so cool. It was flying through beaches, or along beaches, flying through rolling hills in Kentucky. It was super cool. It was super traveled. Cool. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It wasn't just
we did from California to Canada.
Wow.
So
that's
we ended up doing some really cool stuff.
Because you hadn't traveled a lot before that.
No, prior to that I hadn't traveled anywhere.
That's awesome.
I hadn't traveled anywhere. Man. It was my life, or my horizons didn't go past the Oregon mountains back in Las Cruces. They went from that to being expanded all the way to Canada. So I learned a ton. I had so many good experiences. I ended up meeting a bunch of great humans, fantastic humans. It's everywhere I went. It was I have a memorable anecdote that I could probably pull up.
Yeah. And that's where you met Nicole?
Yeah, I met her. So we were in California in Chico. No, it wasn't Chico. It was. Where was it? It's one of those. I don't know if are you very familiar with California? It was a city where there was a bunch of goddamn roosters and chickens everywhere, everywhere. And I can't remember the name of the city for my life, but I remember I hated it so much because they were literally kind of like, I don't know if you've been to Hawaii, but Hawaii has. I haven't been. They have chickens and roosters everywhere as well, but this place was so concentrated, and for some reason, the hotel room that I got was on the backside of the building, where a bunch of chickens and roosters had either trapped themselves or refused to leave. So clucking and making noise was all I heard for a whole week. Man, I was about to seriously run and go to some other place because I couldn't take it. It was just so much noise. But she ended up picking us from the airport one of the times. We had just landed. Finished the day, she picked us up, and we kind of just hit it off, man. We started talking. She told me a little bit about her, herself. I ended up opening up to her, and one thing led to another. Man, yeah, we just clicked. And she's such a good woman, so easy to love, and everything that she's done for me so far has been nothing short of a miracle, man. Everything she does is just encourage and positively push me to do things.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's I really hope that people get to experience this in their life because it's a feeling that I really don't think I can describe, man. To feel that somebody cares about you that much, that they can so selflessly guide you along through life in a way. It's super cool. It's super, super cool. And she's been really supportive about all of my decisions. I mean, you don't come along women that are okay with you traveling away from home all the time. And she was all about it, and she still does. Baby, you're going up to South Africa, get pumped, get excited, and I'm like, how do you manage to stay so positive all the time? Like, it's incredible to me.
Okay, so you're working this cool job. You met Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
How did you end up applying at the place where I was working?
That is a fun one. Okay, so
because that was a less cool job for a whole lot less money, I'm assuming.
it was. I think that's an understatement. So I am. I'm not going to say I'm a man of my convictions, but there's just certain things that I will not risk, and obviously, my life was one of them. The company that I worked for at the time was bypassing certain safety protocols.
Okay.
That's where it started.
Yeah.
And I was not okay with that. I brought it up to the brass, and they didn't appreciate me kind of bringing up my concerns.
Right.
They were very much of the mentality of we didn't ask you, so you don't have to tell us. So I started by refusing to do certain flights because of the risk factors that were involved. And one of the times where we were talking, because obviously brass and the field end up talking amongst themselves about, hey, they're doing this, or, brass is doing that. On one of those conversations, one of the pilots that was about to leave the company for what I understand was the same reasons. He just didn't want to be pushed to do things that he didn't feel comfortable with. He let me know, hey, and just so you know, I know you have kids, and I know you go to the office with your kids. Your boss is a registered sex offender.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't believe it at first. I thought, because this pilot, he was I don't know if you know who Shane Gillis is.
Yeah.
So he was a lot more immature and raunchy, Shane Gillis. And he just loved to make stuff up and troll people. So I thought it was one of those kind of moments. Yeah. But out of curiosity, I just ended up Googling, and it turned out to be true.
Wow.
That boiled my blood over, man. I had my kids in that office with that man. My kids were unattended at certain points, because you don't expect, everyone that you meet, you don't expect them to be that kind of person. Right. So I ended up kind of bringing that up, and that's what got me a ticket to getting promoted from field tech to fired. They let me go.
Got promoted to be unemployed.
Yeah, I got promoted to the.
I'm not sure that's a promotion.
Well, in that case, I would consider it a promotion.
It was an improvement.
Yeah, there you go. It's an improvement. So I decided to, we were already living together here.
Okay.
I just decided to Google whatever was available around. I had heard about the shooting range. Yeah. I have an interest in firearms. I don't pretend to know anything about them, but I figured what better place to actually learn than a shooting range. So I decided to kind of just go for it. Yeah. Not only that, I was kind of desperate for work, man. I mean, I had been unemployed for a couple months at that point.
No, I got that vibe when we interviewed you.
Yeah. Probably by the way I answered, my questions. Right. Everything was sure, yeah. So, excuse me. So I ended up taking whatever I could take at that time, and obviously at that point it was working at the range. And
I'm glad you did. And for clarity for the listeners, I was just an employee there who ended up kind of getting sucked into management. But I wasn't the owner, and the business ended up failing. But I got to meet you.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed with your interview. Like when you left, I was like, we should hire him. And I had the luxury because having my military retirement and just kind of the dynamic between me and the other folks, the owner and stuff, I felt very free in speaking my mind the entire time I was there, and so I was like, yeah, you guys should definitely hire him. And they did, and it was for a lot less money than you deserved, which that didn't make me very happy. But you were an awesome worker, like just great with the people, great with the customers, very eager to learn, very eager to work. You're always looking for work. You're always asking, what can I be doing? And that impressed me a lot, and just your personality. And,
I think that it was a very mutual feeling. But with me, it was how direct and how uninhibited you were with what you had to say, and being able to call other people's bullshit, especially the people that are your bosses. That was so cool.
And that was kind of, I warned them, because they hired me as like they gave me a silly title, Chief Training Officer, but basically I was hired to teach classes and kind of build a training program there, which I was totally stoked about, and then also to interface with outside instructors. And I was on board with absolutely all of that because of my military job. And but then when they started kind of encouraging me into like doing more management type stuff, and not even really managing, just more being there at the meetings and asking my opinion about stuff, I let them know, like, hey, I'm going to tell you guys the hard truth. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And I'm, because this job isn't like, it could have been my dream job, but the pay wasn't amazing, and I also wasn't entirely convinced it was going to work out based on the personalities and the facility and stuff. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to pretend or sugarcoat anything. I'll just tell the truth. And so,
were you raised to be that way?
No, absolutely not.
Because that's the thing that I wanted to kind of delve into a little bit, because I was raised and to be the type of person to not be polite, but give people their way, as to not discomfort them.
So when I was little, before my parents got divorced, I was basically raised to be seen and not heard, and be a perfect child to reflect well on my parents. That was pretty much it. And then once my parents got divorced and I bounced back and forth between the two households a bit, I was pretty much left to my own devices, or left under the supervision of my brother, my oldest brother. And so I was basically, I kind of raised myself like a borderline feral. And so I wasn't really raised to be anything, but I definitely wasn't raised to be like outspoken. And that's just something, you talk about a lot about sort of molding yourself, and I think that's super important for everybody, is to realize you can always change how you are. Like, and I get so really frustrated when I meet people who just kind of, that's how I am, that's their their attitude, and it's like, well, if you're not happy with how you are, you can always just simply change it. Now, it may take time to habituate it and to make it who you are, but I feel like over my years of being in the military, getting out of the military, doing different jobs, and then more specifically after age 30, getting back in the military and finishing my career, I sort of fostered that directness and that, being able to speak my mind. And so I kind of, just decided that's how I needed to be. And then there was a certain freedom of being retiring from the military, because I had, I've got my retirement coming in, which is it's not enough, but it's some money. And so I didn't really, I could pretty much go get almost any job. And that would fill the gap to pay the bills. And so I didn't really feel like I had to be there. So I kind of felt free to, I tried. I tried to help them.
I remember, the other coworker that we had there, kind of looking at each other, because we caught you calling them out on bullshit on multiple occasions, and fortunately we were both present on multiple of these situations, and we would look at each other and we were like, dude, this guy fucking rocks. This guy fucking rocks.
Well,
the fact that he can just tell him like it is, call him out on bullshit.
Well, and by the time you were there, I was starting to see the cracks a little bit, and starting to see that maybe it wasn't going to work out. When I first got there, I was pretty optimistic that I was going to be able to both build the training program I wanted, but also to help guide the range to be a really cool place. And then I was starting to see, by the time you got hired, and that was kind of, toward the end of the summer, and I was starting to realize this probably isn't going to work out,
Yeah.
And I felt like there's still a chance if they made some of the right decisions, but, it didn't work.
I was always hopeful that they'd be,
I
readjust their, whatever it is that they were doing, make some adjustments, and possibly, get that thing going, because I don't know if you talked about, the range before, but for the listeners, this place had so much potential.
Oh, so much. Like, it's a huge, a huge property
Fantastic.
with 17 bays and a sporting clays ranges, 2 sporting clay ranges, and just like a lot of space and a lot of potential. But it was kind of in disrepair and needed work and needed maintenance, and ultimately it needed a big infusion of money that I don't think they had. And
the owners, investors, or whatever, just weren't putting the energy where it needed to go to.
Yeah, and then it was just got a little weird. So,
they got a lot of weird.
We both left on the same day, you and I.
That place is something else.
So you left the range, and you worked for a landscaping company for a while, right?
Yes, I ended up going into management. So I was the director of operations for a company that's been around for about 30 years. And again, taking a page out of your book, I was learning to kind of be more outspoken, especially on the things that mattered most. When I was at the helicopter company, I did tell them about my concerns about how they were bypassing certain safety protocols. But I didn't really set my foot down. I just kept bringing back my concerns without really any solution. It was whining. It was essentially what I was doing, So when I ended up taking this role, I basically pulled a Glenn and I said, you know what, I'm not doing this. We're not going to do this.
Yeah.
We were doing things that were borderline illegal, man. And I was not going to end up being part of some fucking news broadcast that ended up showing me as this guy could have stopped this whole situation from happening. I mean, he is a director of operations. He should have done something about it. Yeah. So I ended up leaving that place after about a year and some change. I just couldn't do it anymore. The owner and I were bumping heads. He was doing stuff that he shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, and that's just not who you are.
No. My train of thought there was, I have to get these dudes back to their family. They have families. They have things. I'm not going to risk them getting in an accident, hurting themselves. Possibly in a way where they are no longer able to function the way they currently do. So I told him, man, I appreciate your opportunity, and I hope your business goes the way you want it to. But I will tell you this: you've been in the same place for 30 years, doing the same thing. Nothing has changed. It should tell you there, that there's things that have to change. Yeah. And so I came across my current and most beloved job, career. At this point, I want to make it a career. And now I travel the world.
So, and speak as broadly as you like, what are you doing now?
We are essentially the FAA of outer space. We make sure
Sounds big.
We essentially make sure that objects in space, primarily satellites and stuff like that, are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Wow.
That they don't collide with each other. That they aren't doing things they aren't supposed to.
So I'm guessing radar and stuff is involved, or some kind of sensory.
There's a lot of sensory stuff that we do use. Objects like telescopes to be able to track stuff down. So we do a lot of watching, if you will. Just make sure we watch things and make sure they are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
And so when you're traveling, are you going to various monitoring stations? Or?
So we have sites all over the world.
Yeah.
And they're very remote. So when I end up going to these places, I don't get the touristy experience. Yeah. We get a very rich experience. We end up meeting people that Otherwise, you wouldn't meet out. A lot of people when they go to Greece, they say, "Well, I want to go to Athens." We end up going to the mountains of Crete.
Some remote, mountaintop.
Yeah. We end up going to the mountains of Crete, and you end up meeting great folks in these tiny towns where everyone knows
They're
themselves.
not just selling you T-shirts.
Oh no, dude, no. They actually don't want you there. Right. If you could leave as soon as possible, it'd be great. There's most of these places have been very welcoming. I think the only place that we weren't very welcome was in Australia, and that was
really
the Aboriginals. They and I can understand why they feel a certain way. I was actually saved by the color of my skin on that situation. The guy that I was with at that time could have ended very badly.
Really?
Yeah, wow. Yeah. The Aboriginal gentleman that we ended up getting into the altercation with was not happy at all about this gentleman having blonde hair, blue eyes, and very, very white skin. He kept yelling at him, "Where are you from? I'm from here. Get away from my land."
Oh my gosh.
And it all, the way this started was we had ended working at one of our sites, and it was late at night. Every single night that we left the job site and we were going back into the city of Alice Springs, there was a fire out, like a bushfire in random, places of the road as we were heading home. And we later found out that a lot of these fires are started by either, teenagers, but a lot of the Aboriginal guys will start fires because they are unhappy with,
okay.
what either a treatment or an experience they had, or it's a kind of a protest.
Form protest.
And we were headed back, and we saw the biggest fire we've seen so far. It's very close to a tree. And I pulled out my phone, and I just being a smartass, kind of for social media. I started recording, and I said, just another day, in Alice Springs, there's another fire. But when I zoomed in on my phone, I saw there was a family running away, and I saw a car in the background that was on fire.
Oh, wow.
Well, it turns out the guy that was driving that car set the car on fire due to a domestic dispute that he had with the lady that was with him in that car at the time. I didn't know this. I when they were running away from the car, my first course of action was to see if there was anyone else in the car. I do have a firefighting background, so I kind of knew what I had to do. Running towards him, he was carrying a kid, and my brain went straight to, there's probably another kid in this car. If there's one, there's probably two. Fortunately, there was not. I couldn't understand anything of what they were saying. Their vocabulary doesn't include English words, but they're mostly the really bad words.
Okay.
So when I was able to ask them, is there anybody else in the car? He was able to muster out, no one else. And I said, okay, that's cool. You're carrying your kid. There's two other ladies running behind him. One of them, her face is a mess. She's beat. And I'm assuming she probably hit her head when they hit, something in the car. That's why it's on fire.
Right.
Turns out that the only thing that hit her was the guy carrying the kid. We didn't know any of this, granted, until we get him far away, so that there's no real danger to anybody close to that fire. At that point, there's another lady that shows up. There's a line of traffic at this point, prior to getting to where the fire is at. And it's a tiny road, and it's a two-way, so nobody can go anywhere really because that fire is so close to the road. Right. So there's just a line of cars starting to pile up. It's pretty late at night, maybe 10:30. One of the ladies gets out of the car, and she says, give me your kid so, they can I can have them play with my daughter while police shows up so that she doesn't get scared. He agrees. He lets the kid go, and as soon as the kid gets taken away, he swings around and starts trying to hit the lady.
Oh my gosh!
It went from like, I'm glad everyone's safe, to what the hell is going on. I had no idea what's going on. I just simply tried to kind of push the guy away.
You don't even know what's going on.
I have no. My only instinct was, I don't want him to beat this lady in front of his kid. I just don't want him to beat this lady in general. It's just not something you want to see happen. I kind of grab him, put him to the side. She's yelling all sorts of profanities in very clear English at this point. Your Australian usuals. I'll let you figure that one out. So she's just pointing at him and she's saying, "You burned my car. You burned my car." And I'm like, "Okay, so what's going on, dude?" I pull him to the side. I ask him what's going on. He's able to kind of describe to me and say, she basically ended up talking to someone he didn't want her to talk to at the bar that they were at. They were all drunk, dude.
Yeah,
they were all
of
drunk.
Course.
Yeah, and they're driving with this kid in the back, and I was completely just out.
That's like a universal tale of like domestic problems. Is everybody's out drinking and.
Oh yeah. So, this lady is bleeding from everywhere in her face. Her lips are just busted open. Poor lady she ends up passing out. I don't think it was blood loss. I think it just might have been either either alcohol or high emotion, or I don't know. But as soon as she falls to the ground, he stops looking at me and hones in on her again and tries to stomp on her. Oh man! So I grab him by or what's left of his shirt, because his shirt was pretty torn. I grab him by the shirt. I pull him back and I tell him, "Stop doing that! Stop doing that!" At this point, there's more people starting to kind of, wheel around. Most of my Aussie folks out there are pretty much, white, very light-skinned, blonde, blue eyes. They start kind of trying to help, but this guy sees it as more of a...
interference.
Yeah, they're interfering. Yeah. The guy that I was with was very tall, skinny guy. He tries to tell him to stop, and as soon as he gets involved, the Aboriginal guy just locks eyes, man. And he pulls out a knife. It wasn't a very big one. It was maybe 3 inches. But you can do a lot of things with that. I was able to, as soon as I saw him, I was able to grab his wrist, and I told this guy, "Run into the car and lock yourself in it." He froze for a second, but as soon as I called his name again, I yelled at him. I told him, "Get in the fucking car." He ran to the car, and at that point, this guy had slipped my wrist, and he was already headed after him. Fortunately, once he got into the car, he kind of came back, and he weirdly kind of mellowed out a little more again. But along comes Polly. This guy just comes up, and he starts exacerbating everything all over again. He starts telling him he's a bitch. He shouldn't be hitting women. Why don't you hit me? He just starts he just starts making everything worse. Yeah, dude, he just made everything worse. And so this guy again tries to do the whole thing, but once more I was able to grab his wrist, and I kind of pried his fingers, grabbed the knife, and I threw it to the side.
Man, you're lucky you didn't get cut.
Yeah, I didn't know until later on that the thing that saved my ass was my skin color. Yeah. They didn't really care about me because I was just a brown dude that they probably saw more common ground with than all these other folks. Because at the end, he was just yelling at everyone. Yeah. You guys leave my land. What are you doing here? I am from here. You leave. You leave. Yeah. He apparently he's well known around town for doing this kind of shenanigan. Yeah. But I walked away with an experience that definitely affected me. Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's and
good for you for trying to help, but those situations can be so hard to decipher. And then when people start changing sides and stuff in the middle of a situation, and you're just like, I don't even know at this point what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, I think I had the right intent. I was
absolutely.
I was just trying to help, but I never in a million years thought it would
Didn't
evolve into that mess that it ended up being, man. And I mean, me and this guy just talk about it. Nowadays, we laugh about it, but it could have been a really bad night. And I don't know. Police officers did tell me, they took my information down, and they told me, if you ever are here again and you see something like this happen, let it happen.
I was gonna say, don't stop.
He said, let it happen. Yeah. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, how are you? And he says, there's just things that you just don't want to involve yourself in. And I don't know if they have sort of, how we have the tribal police here. I don't know if they have something similar to that. but I believe he alluded to them having their own way of solving, conflict.
Yeah.
So he just told me, I know what you were trying to do, but next time just let it happen, man.
It's tough interfacing with other cultures where, like, we have certain things that just are, total no-go criteria, like, beating someone up, especially beating a woman up. It's just like, no, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But then in other cultures, it's not okay to intervene, and so it's just like, wow, okay.
Yeah, there's some cultures that actually allow it.
Yeah, you can get in real trouble. If you try and stop it.
So I've learned to kind of every time I'm going to deploy to an area that I'm not very familiar with, look up some of their customs or.
I used to do that before deployments. I would read I'd read as many books as I could about the region where I was going. So like before Afghanistan, I probably read 10 books on Afghanistan.
Whoa, okay.
And before I went to Africa, I read a whole bunch of books on Africa, as well as there's a series of books called The World's Most Dangerous Places by a guy he's a journalist named Robert Young Pelton, and he I don't know if he's still doing it, but he was updating it every couple of years. And it would just cover, like, he would literally just go to the craziest places in the world as a journalist. And this guy, and he's just an amazing writer, really, just a really stellar journalist. But it also gives you a lot of insight into, if you're in this part of Africa, don't start taking pictures of the people around you.
What's the name of the author?
Robert Young Pelton.
Okay, I'm going to look him up.
Yeah, he's super famous. He used to write for like Outside Magazine and stuff. That's how I got onto him. But then I found these books, and I have a couple of editions of The World's Most Dangerous Places. And, And I've actually got a few other books of his about mercenaries and contracting and stuff like that. But yeah, he's just a really stellar journalist, and you go to these places and get into some pretty crazy situations, and I guess he's super good at making friends because he survives. But it offers so much insight into those countries. So yeah, if you're going to Sierra Leone or something, he's got.
Yeah, no, I had a completely naive thought of how things were going to go.
And I wouldn't expect Australia, honestly. I honestly wouldn't probably do the same kind of research going to Australia because I've watched Crocodile Dundee. That's like a known quantity. No, but seriously, like you don't think, I wouldn't think, and that's just it's naivety and not knowing. Like I know the Aboriginals are there, and they're the indigenous people, and they might feel a certain kind of way toward the Australian government and stuff, but I wouldn't have expected. And that's totally unreasonable because, like, why wouldn't you expect that?
And
they're people just
in
like
my head, I saw myself as an Anthony Bourdain of sorts, where I'd be,
You're just gonna come in and everybody's gonna love you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have meals with the Aboriginals and the people of Africa, and no, that's
they'll build you a didgeridoo and
bring back a didgeridoo from. Yeah, man, no, it's.
But you made yourself with beeswax and
Man, fortunately, that's probably been one of the only pretty serious experience I've had. Everything else has been great.
How many times have you been to Australia now?
Twice. So I did a whole tour of the eastern side the first time, and then I did the western side.
How long are you gone at a time?
About 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah,
okay.
About 2 weeks. So we went for my last deployment. We went from Carnarvon all the way down to Perth.
Wow.
That's
so cool.
Yeah, we went down the coast, and it was really cool. Not what I expected at all, but. It was very interesting. I met a lot of really, really cool people.
I've met a ton of Australians that were super cool.
Every single one that I met was very nice.
And they love to drink.
Oh my God. So the last time I was there, let me tell you something.
The people from the Commonwealth countries love to drink.
The last time I was there, man, they let me know that they were going to go grab a rack of piss. That's what they call.
Yep,
that's what they
case
call
of beer.
Yeah, a case of beer. So we're going to get a rack of piss, and I said, "Gross, cool, whatever that means." So later they came back with their beers, and we ended up talking space and satellites and aliens over a couple of beers. It was such a great conversation. Yeah, man, it was such a great conversation. And you're talking about very highly intellectual people that are willing to let go of a lot of their inhibitions and just kind of speak what they really feel. Not be tied down to all these professional theories or whatever it is. They just kind of let it go, and they said it'd be pretty stupid to think that we're the only life form out here. And I was like, well, that's a cool way. I've never really thought about it. I don't think ET was out there, but I mean, it's possible.
You never know.
Yeah, and you never know, man.
Time will tell. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. So now that we're going to Africa, it's going to be a little different. I have no experience with Africa, but
yeah, that's something you might want to do a little studying of.
yeah,
Because it's pretty. Since post-apartheid South Africa can be fairly volatile depending on where you are.
yeah. I know a little bit about the whole Houthi stuff, but fortunately we're not going to be. We're not going to be in that region. At least not this year. We will be maybe next year, which is going to be interesting. But yeah. So it's going to be definitely an experience, and
awesome.
I've been trying to Google as much as I can about that area, but hopefully we stay. I think we're staying pretty close to Johannesburg. Maybe 2 hours is the furthest we'll be going from Johannesburg this time around.
Yeah, and maybe it's changing. Like I just know they had like tremendous crime.
Yeah.
Just, like crazy amounts.
Yeah. I mean, I was told right away by my boss. He says, "I know you carry a Pelican case. Don't take it when you're going out to Africa.
Yeah.
Take just some simple suitcase and don't make yourself a target."
Yeah.
So yeah, that was some good intel on his behalf. So I decided to go buy some cheap suitcases to take with me, because I do have my big old Pelican Air stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I like to carry because it's so good, man.
Advertise that you got money.
Hey, I got those on eBay, man, for dirt cheap. So yeah, I saved myself a bunch of money. Yeah, man.
So you're out for 2 weeks at a time, and then how long are you back for in between trips?
I could be anywhere between 2 weeks to a month.
Oh, okay, that's good.
So I get a lot.
So it's kind of more at home.
Oh
than away.
yeah. No,
That's
I'm telling you, my work-life balance is probably the best I think I've ever seen from any job.
Nice.
Being out there, I've never been out on deployment for more than 12 days.
Okay.
And then I get to be home for 2 weeks to a month.
That's awesome.
It's man. I get to do all kinds of stuff at home. I've been trying to pick up jiu-jitsu.
That's funny. Sal and I were just talking about that.
Really?
I was like, because I was like, I would like to start doing jiu-jitsu because I've got zero ground game. If I can't finish the fight before we go to the ground, and I know that's really foolish because fights generally go to the ground, and I've got just a tiniest bit of some wrestling, but not much.
Ground game. Well,
I just try to avoid fights.
I don't know how you landed Sally, man, because you've got no game at all. But I mean, I guess ground game would be a good place to.
She took me on as a charity case. She's awesome, and she's very much encouraged. So she was like, "Yeah, you should just take classes." I'm like, "Well, I don't know if I want to burn a night, every week. Like even just going once a week." And I know a lot of times they recommend more than that. I'm just like, I don't know.
Why not, man? I would say.
Well, it's the whole work-life balance thing because I'm working 5 days a week, and I generally try to be home when my daughter's home.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very important to be present.
Yes.
I know you feel the same way. Being present in your children's life, and so I try not to burn too much of my off time doing stuff that's not family.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that's because when I was in the military, I burned a lot of family time being away.
Didn't really have a choice.
I deployed when my daughter was 2 months old. Not a stellar husband move. Came back to. Sally was fine, but she could have been really grumpy about that.
I'm assuming from what I understand, Sally is very supportive.
Oh, super supportive. So she's so good.
She did great. She did great. She held her own. She held it down. And now you guys are here, and you guys have a wonderful daughter, and probably one of the smartest, 13-year-olds I think I've ever met, dude.
She's pretty good. She's a good kid, and so we're just always, once again, we're always trying to figure out what's the best, the best way to make, to help. And how old's your oldest?
11.
11. Okay,
Yeah.
So you're getting into the age that I don't know. Girls and boys are very different, but I feel like as they get into the teenage years, you're not really telling them anything.
No.
Like they're not trying to hear it, but I think the influence is still there. It's just in other ways, and so modeling, consistent messaging, modeling, showing, and then you kind of hope they circle back around. So like time will tell when she's an adult. But she's a good kid, and she's super smart. probably because of Sally. And
Yeah. I don't think it was you. It was definitely Sally.
definitely.
No, I had a little bit of a head start with kind of understanding teenagers because I helped raise my niece, and I saw her kind of develop into the young woman she is now. She's now going to be 15, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I think at that age, you're not telling them anything. You have to show them.
Yeah,
I think they're.
And it's still your job as a parent to tell them stuff, but they're not.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like
they don't care.
The message is not being received the way you're intending. But I do think they still see how we are and what we do and how we treat each other, and
That's and I think that's
I think critical.
Definitely, I can definitely see that in trying to go back and remember some of the behaviors and things I saw from her.
Yeah.
She was trying to figure out what this whole privacy thing was, but at the same time,
we're working through a lot of that now.
Yeah,
and just like I say, we try and do our best. I don't know. It's a tough, scary world, especially with social media and smartphones, and just trying to navigate all that and not ruin her.
Yeah, I think at least my generation was lucky enough to have to deal with the whole social media, and at more of the tail end of our development. I think I didn't start to really go into social media until I was like my 17 or 18 year old. But so I had a better grasp of and
a more developed brain. Like that's a huge thing is now and she doesn't have the only social media type thing she has is she has YouTube, like limited access, and then she has Pinterest, which seems fairly harmless compared to some of the others.
I'm just gonna pin this.
But it's tough, like they're because they don't have a fully developed frontal cortex, and so they don't have that self-regulation ability, and so it's very addictive, just by its nature, by how it works and how it gives the little dopamine hits with
Yeah, and I think that's a lot. I have that huge issue with YouTube because they don't have restricted access, but they do have. So I don't know if by restricted you mean kind of like the kids' YouTube.
Yeah, that's what
So they do have that, but even then, man, I've been able to catch on to some stuff that really shouldn't.
No, there's still ways. There's ways, and so then it's a little bit trying to have some monitoring and it's tough.
So we were able to mitigate that with when you're at home, you are outside earning yourself some scars, getting dirty.
That's awesome.
Developing some kind of skill. When they're in the car, they're allowed to watch YouTube, but we
Pay
are
attention.
you're only going to watch some Mark Rober stuff, learn about being an engineer, physics, all that stuff. So at least we're able to control it in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's being intentional and doing your best.
Yes.
It's not going to be perfect, I don't think. At least not for me. I'm not going to be the perfect dad, but I'm trying. I'm putting effort in, and that's where I think if you're not putting any effort in, or if you're doing stuff by default just because that's how you were parented, I think that's maybe not the best route.
Yeah. I think I've been very intentional in not emulating any of that and taking the
what's
best,
good. Yeah, like
what's the best.
Take what's good. There's stuff. There's many lessons that my parents taught me that were good that I'm happy to pass on. But then there's other stuff that I'm going a different way, and that's okay. It's not an indictment of what my parents did. They were just a different generation. And different challenges.
They had a different understanding of how the world worked as opposed to what we know now, and with this age of like social media and how available everything is through the internet, man. It's
well, and really, I want to set her up to have a good job when the robots take over. So I want her to be positioned well to be a good helper for the robots.
For when the T1000 start showing up.
I feel like Hollywood has made movies that kind of warned us about this, and you were still driving forward with it.
Man, yeah, I really do believe it, man. I think there's things that we just shouldn't be, kind of meddling with. It just
my hope is that like most problems that humanity has come across will overcome it. It's wild.
I think that's my hope as well. Now, how confident or how much confidence I have in the way humanity's headed, I wouldn't say it's a lot. No,
yeah, but like I said, we're not the first generation to say that. So
true.
many generations have thought we were headed straight to hell, and just imagine at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and just like all the artisans and craftsmen that were suddenly thrown for a loop by, factories and automation, and just like.
And started with the assembly line, and then it just developed into
Henry Ford.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, like, because you just can't. You look at an old house. Our first house that we had up in Portland was 1912 was when it was built, and like you look at how those places were built, and the craftsmanship and the work and the artistry that went into that, and you just can't build stuff that way now because it's too expensive. And so you have to use modern building methods. And so there's the artistry, people talk about encouraging the arts, but it used to be just simply by being having a job, you were an artist to a certain degree, whether it was making shoes or, furniture or whatever it was. There was a certain artistry in a lot of it that's gone away. And so...
Yeah, I think...
so I can imagine that was probably a bit of a shock to the system, to the people from the 1800s, in the early 1900s. So now we're from the 1900s, and we're into the early 2000s, and so maybe it'll be okay. Our kids might be smarter than and more adaptable than we are, and that's the big thing. I watch my daughter navigate some of the social issues and stuff now with a lot more ease than I do. She has kind of an innate understanding and a lack of concern about some of the things that I'm like, I don't get that. It's like it doesn't matter. Like and she just kind of flows through that without any stress, and so that's
I think that's good, man.
Yeah,
that's
gives me some hope. That, our young people figure it out. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to figure it out.
To be honest, there's a lot of things that go on right now that I just don't care to. Unless I feel they're going to have a direct impact on them.
No, that's kind of where I'm. In fact, that's why I don't. We don't have TV and I don't watch the news because most of it doesn't directly affect me, and I don't have any effect on it. And then I also question the authenticity of much of it. So So I'm just kind of like, well, then I just don't need to concern myself.
Yeah.
I kind of dip my toe in a little bit, just checking like what are the major headlines, but I don't really get too spun up about it. Because I don't see a way to do that actually makes sense.
Yeah, no, all the headlines are the same. I mean, that's kind of where I want to get to at this point, where I just don't really concern myself with a lot of the stuff that's on the news anymore. I just kind of just stow it away and not worry about it, because
I think it's a happier existence.
Yeah, I mean, all the headlines essentially allude to the same thing. We're all going to hell.
Doom and gloom.
Whatever sells those articles, and I just don't feel that's probably why I'm a little bit apathetic and cynical about my existence and where humanity is going in general. But I feel if I'm able to rip myself away from all the news and all the crap that's going on, I think a happier existence.
That's energy you can put into your family.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing, is like I see people screaming at Fox News or whatever, and it's like, so that's energy that you're just wasting. That's time that you're just giving away to the TV,
Yeah. I honestly, I think now what I really look at is just the memes, man. Because come on, dude, the memes. We all live for the memes.
Cat videos.
Cat videos.
I spent a whole day curating my Facebook feed to Beagle stuff. I started liking Beagle videos and Beagle pictures, and even now, I haven't been doing that for a while, but I still get pictures of, and I'm like, okay, so you can actually, like, people complain about the algorithm, but it's really kind of what you curate.
Yeah.
It's the energy you give, it gives back, and so you can just click on different stuff. You don't have to keep going down the rabbit hole of that story that enraged me, or and so I did Beagles one day, and Beagles don't make me mad.
Yeah, it's just tough because everything that I've seen, I mean, not everything, but a lot of the stuff that's on social media now is just incendiary shit, man. It's stuff that's trying to
it's been, social media's been weaponized, and and then it's also an echo chamber,
Yeah.
and so, I definitely have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends kind of on the full spectrum of politics, but I have conservative friends who, if I pay too much attention to what they're posting and reposting and sharing, that paints a picture. And then I have friends more on the left who, are going a different direction. And it really, if I only was looking at one, I'd have a very skewed view of, and if I trusted that was what the world's like, but it's not. Like the world is,
The world is the world.
getting
man.
out and talking to some Aussie over a rack of piss.
That is the world, man. That's honestly.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, just talk to people, and if you talk to any person on this planet, you've got way more in common with them than you have differences.
Yeah.
And then I think the real question is, are those differences deal breakers? And so much in today's society, we're encouraged to make them deal breakers.
Yeah.
Because I have a different opinion about you about man buns.
Yeah.
We can't be friends. Instead of, it's not my jam because I can't grow hair, so I'm not going to do that. But we don't, it's like you can look for ways to fight or you can look for ways to agree, and there's plenty of ground for agreement. And I think that's.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think we've been trained to be able to tear each other apart.
Oh,
And
especially
even
recently.
on some trivial differences.
Exactly,
man.
yeah.
It's just, it's kind of crazy.
And be very binary.
Yes.
All or nothing. If I disagree with you on one thing, you're now on the other side.
Yeah.
Not, that's the one thing we disagree on, but we agree on all these other things. Or, no, I got to push you over into that other group and make you one of them.
That's one of the things that I see online all the time, and it makes me laugh because now it's just them calling each other the left or the right. And
Yeah, or I say this, and if you disagree with me, go ahead and unfriend me. It's like, I hardly ever unfriend anybody on Facebook.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to. Like, for one thing, they're on Facebook. They're not in my life. Like,
Yeah.
like some of them are local or whatever. But, like, a lot of them are Facebook friends, so I don't really consider that. I don't put a lot of weight. So if they say something like, I don't need to unfriend you, I can just ignore you. I can ignore that thing. And maybe there's something else I like about you. Or if all I'm seeing on your feed is stuff I don't like, then maybe.
Yeah. Maybe at that point, we'll hit that.
Unfriend, or you can hide people, too. I found that out after I had unfriended somebody that I probably didn't need to. So it turns out if you click the three little things in the corner, the dots, and it's like hide this, and it just hide.
So no longer on your feed?
You're still friends, but you don't see their stuff anymore. Yeah, because I had somebody in my Facebook friend circle, this was a while ago, who was new to Facebook. It was when Facebook was pretty new, and was literally posting every minute of the day, like everything.
How do you find time?
What'd you have for lunch? And I think on the anxiety rectangle, just posting away.
And then they complain about not having privacy.
Yeah,
Dude,
but it was just
telling
like
us
every minute of the
everything.
day, and so I unfriend, and then I found out about the hide. I was like, I could have just hidden that person because it wasn't anything inflammatory that was making me mad. I was just, I don't need to know what you had for breakfast. And lunch.
I
and
agree.
Dinner,
Yeah, I agree.
know?
I agree. And I see so many people complaining about, this is social media is such a dangerous place. Yeah. And then you go into their profile and they're posting a picture with their kids, and they checked in at this place,
right.
At this time, and it's like you literally just told everyone.
You make
what
it. It's a little bit of it is what you make it. Like, I think it's a dangerous place for kids.
Yes.
Because they don't have the cognitive abilities to kind of sort some of the stuff out, and also just the way it affects them, and the potential for harm, especially when it comes to cyberbullying and things like that.
Yeah, not only cyberbullying, I had my
and just bad influence, just like there's unrealistic, because the other thing is, besides the person that posts every single minute of their day, is most people post just the good stuff, and and just the pretty pictures, especially young women, like and then they're using filters, they're using Photoshop, and they're changing it so they have no flaws, and
crazy.
And so then you see like teenage girls buying anti-wrinkle cream, or posting pictures with filters on their face. It's like you're 14, you don't need a filter on your face. Like it's about as good as it's gonna get. Like, in terms of wrinkles, you know?
I don't understand. They're setting these crazy expectations for these kids that believe that to be true.
Right, and that's going to affect self-esteem, and and there's a lot of evidence that the mental health of especially young girls is decreasing drastically since social media and front-facing cameras on the phones, and and especially like Twitter and Snapchat and stuff. Some of the ways that those platforms interface is just not healthy. So I don't know.
TikTok, things like TikTok and stuff like that.
Hopefully, society will kind of get that figured out. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I try and retain some hope. Like, I try not
I think that's a good way to see things. That is definitely a good way to see things. I try to stay as positive as I possibly can now, especially with, like you said, the things that you see on social media.
Look up some pictures and videos of beagles. They're pretty cool dogs.
Okay. Beagles, huh?
They're super cute. Yeah.
Beagles are those the hunting dogs?
They are hunting dogs.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a hound.
They're a hound.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like brown and white spots and big floppy ears, and they're just a really cute face.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to start looking at that.
Our little dog was part beagle. She had some beagle in her. So
okay.
Yeah.
Did she get to live here?
What?
Did she get to live here, or was that a dog you had?
No, she lived here. Did you?
Really? I don't think I ever met her.
I don't think you did, because she wasn't with us that long. She got kidney disease and had to be put to sleep. So.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was rough. My daughter took it a little hard, and I mean the whole family did, because she was super good. But she was a rescue, and she obviously had not been treated well. So I mean, we take a lot of comfort in that we made her last few months. Like, she seemed very happy here. So
it was just giving her a better quality of life.
Yeah. We didn't know. We didn't know that we only had a few months.
Jesus.
That's rough. So
that's really rough.
It's animals. Life and death. I think we've covered most everything I want to cover.
Yeah. Thank you for having me over, man. This was good. This was definitely good. I think it was one of the ways that I was hoping that I could kind of release a lot of this emotion. I might not have shown it, but
I could tell. I saw it.
It's definitely something that I feel everyone should try to open themselves up to, because talking can definitely help. Not only you, but hopefully some of the listeners are able to take.
No, that's exactly it. I think you have a good story, and like I said, I think most people probably do have a good story, but you also have a good way of telling your story, and I think there's a ton of value in that sharing and talking about the hard stuff. I get value out of hearing your story and your struggles, and I have different struggles, but some of them are the same, and some of them, and
similar.
Similar, and just being inspired by listening to kind of, you went to some bad places and then you pulled yourself out, and that's pretty inspirational right there, because a lot of people need to be pulled out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, if they can take anything out of what we discussed today, is you have a guy that had no direction in life, that had dug himself into an area that I at one point thought I would never get out of. And now I get to satisfy my little ape brain with looking at the stars and working in a field that I would never in a million years have seen me go into, aerospace and space domain. And now I have a son who is so stoked about what I'm doing.
That's so
cool. Wants to be an engineer.
Yeah.
We've gotten to a point where now we're buying these kits where he gets to engineer and learn about either an aspect of physics or just science in general, and he gets to learn about solar, learn about kinetic energy, potential energy, all these different things that he wasn't interested in before. But now that Dad is in that field, he's super inspired and wants to go into that, and it makes me feel good.
It's kind of staggering the amount of influence that we truly have. And that's what I was saying. Like, we may not be able to tell him as much, but it still matters.
Yeah, showing them.
Just being present, showing them, and then also just putting, if you're not happy with something, change it. And, You know, we can always, I think we can reinvent ourselves and self-improve. You know, it doesn't ever have to stop.
Yeah, make a list of things that make you happy. Make a list of things that don't make you happy. Look at both and change.
There you go.
That's the best way, man.
What do you want to close with? Parting words.
Find yourself a Glenn, man. Find yourself a Glenn.
I think you're giving me way too much credit.
No, I think you're not understanding the kind of impact that you had on this, little brown boy.
You.
It was a huge inspiration to be able to see the way you lived your life, the way you were as a person, as a human, how you can care about someone, but also call them out on their bullshit, man. It takes a different type of human, because most people would see that as just a hater or someone who is trying to intrude in how they live their life. And for me, it was just seeing someone that actually cared and wanted to see the best in what people had to offer. And I was able to kind of make or set a point of view in life that I didn't have before.
Well, that's very gratifying.
It is.
It makes me so happy to see you doing well, and to see some of the other folks we worked with doing well.
Yeah, man. And Nicole has brought it up multiple times and said, ever since you started working at that place, you have definitely developed into a human that I know you can be proud of. And it hasn't stopped there, and it won't stop there, but everyone needs to
I think a little bit, give yourself some credit, because I think a little bit of that is also just where you were in life.
Yeah.
And so if I helped out a little bit, that's awesome, but I also think you did the hard stuff, you did the work, and you went out and I didn't get you the satellite job. But I'm really glad that you found your way there.
Yeah, people need to they need to make sure that the people that they are surrounding themselves are going to be the type to propel them to be better.
Awesome. I think we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, man.